Welcome to the channel, where every story brings you closer to courage, connection, and the moments that change everything. If you're watching right now, we'd love to know. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop your city or country. The comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss tomorrow's powerful new tale. It's one you definitely don't want to miss. Now get ready to dive into today's unforgettable journey. Let's begin. The dog attacked a royal guard horse. What followed will leave. You speechless? It was a crisp golden morning outside Buckingham Palace, the kind that made the air feel alive. The grand gates of the palace sparkled under the rising sun, casting long shadows over the historic cobblestones. Tourists from around the world had begun to gather, some holding up phones to capture the grandeur, others simply standing in awe of the royal guard. Among the guards stood Staff Sergeant Michael Reed, 32 years old, tall, composed, and dressed, full ceremonial uniform. His hand rested gently on the reins of Shadow, a magnificent 200-pound black stallion, known not only for his beauty, but for his unmatched discipline. Shadow stood motionless, ears forward, eyes alert. Every inch of him exuded elegance and power. Children pointed with wide eyes, giggling with excitement, while parents reminded them to stay behind the barriers. Michael remained calm, his expression unreadable, yet his bond with Shadow was visible. In every subtle movement, two veterans of the guard who had faced years of public events together. Their posture synchronized, their silence deliberate. Not far from them stood Jessica Moore, a 27-year-old tourist from Austin, Texas. It was her first time in London, and this moment, standing in front of the palace, felt like a dream. Her camera was slung over her shoulder, but her focus was on the royal horse. Clutched tightly in her hand was the leash of her bulldog, Rocky, a muscular 45-pound bundle of energy with a mind of his own. His nose twitched at the scent of horse and leather. His short legs danced with anticipation. "Rocky, easy," Jessica whispered, crouching down to tighten the leash. But Rocky's eyes were locked on Shadow, and something primal had stirred. The small bulldog, the towering horse, wasn't a symbol of royalty. It was a challenge, a giant waiting to be conquered. And in the blink of an eye, everything changed. With a sudden jerk, Rocky slipped his collar. Jessica gasped, lunging forward, but it was too late. The dog darted between people's legs, his stubby legs surprisingly fast, heading straight toward Shadow. The crowd turned with a collective gasp. Phones dropped. Tourists shrieked. In the chaos, laughter turned to fear. Shadow sensed the movement before Michael saw it. The horse's ears snapped back, his muscles tensed. Michael tightened his grip on the reins, but the situation escalated in seconds. Rocky lunged at Shadow's legs, barking furiously, his jaws snapping at air and hooves. Shadow reared, rising nearly 7 feet off the ground, his front legs pawing at the sky. "Whoa, easy," Michael shouted, trying to regain control. His heart pounded as the stallion bucked and twisted. The crowd began to scatter, screaming and backing away, forming a circle of fear around the unfolding chaos. And amidst the noise and confusion, a small child stepped into danger. 6-year-old Aiden had been holding his mother's hand just moments earlier, watching the ceremony with wonder. But now, as people rushed in every direction, their grip had broken. Aiden stood frozen in the open space, just a few feet from the thrashing stallion. His eyes were wide. His small body trembled. He couldn't move. Michael saw him. Just a flash of blonde hair in the corner of his eye. But it was enough. He made his decision in an instant. With years of training and pure instinct guiding him, Michael dismounted in one fluid motion, landing hard on the pavement. Pain shot through his knees, but he didn't stop. With one hand still gripping the reins, he reached out with the other. "Kid, over here," he shouted. Aiden blinked, as if waking up from a nightmare. He stumbled toward Michael, crying now, his little sneakers scraping the ground. Michael scooped him up with one arm and shoved him toward a nearby officer who had just arrived. "Get him out of here," Michael ordered before turning back toward Shadow, And the chaos wasn't over yet. Michael turned back just in time to see Rocky lunge again, this time with more force. The little bulldog, despite his size, had the determination of a wild animal. His teeth clamped down on Shadow's hind leg, sinking into the muscle just above the fetlock. Shadow let out a deafening scream, a high-pitched whinny that echoed off the palace walls and sent chills through the air. It was a sound Michael had never heard from his horse before. Not in training, not in battle drills, not even in the middle of crowded royal ceremonies. This was raw pain, real fear. And that terrified Michael more than anything. Shadow, easy boy, he yelled, tugging on the reins, trying to pull the horse away. But Shadow was panicking. His eyes were wild. His massive body twisted violently as he tried to shake Rocky loose, nearly losing his footing in the process. Hooves slammed into the pavement with bone-rattling force, sending shockwaves through the stone courtyard. Jessica was already on the ground, crawling toward her dog. Her heart raced. Her palms scraped against the rough pavement. She could hear nothing except the thundering of hooves and the desperate barking of Rocky. "No, no, no, Rocky, stop!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Let go! Please!" But Rocky wasn't listening. He was locked in as if possessed. His entire body trembled with effort, refusing to release his grip, even as Shadow tried to kick him away. A few feet away, young Aiden clung to his mother, Rachel, sobbing uncontrollably. She held him tight, whispering, "You're safe now. It's okay," over and over. But she couldn't take her eyes off the scene unfolding just feet from where her child had nearly been crushed. Officers were rushing in, but there was no clear way to intervene without putting more lives at risk. No one wanted to get between a panicked 200-pound stallion and a crazed dog. Michael knew it had to end now. Dropping the reins momentarily, a risky move he wouldn't recommend to any soldier, he stepped in closer, crouched low, and reached for Rocky's collar. "Come on, boy," he muttered under his breath, trying to find a calm he didn't feel. "Let go. That's enough." Suddenly, Jessica grabbed Rocky from the other side. Together, they pulled. For a few agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then finally, with one last tug, Rocky released his hold. His jaws opened, teeth stained with blood, tongue panting as he backed off, now visibly exhausted. Jessica wrapped both arms around him, sobbing uncontrollably. Shadow stood frozen. His flanks were heaving. Blood trickled down his leg, staining the white straps of his guard regalia. Michael approached him slowly, whispering softly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "You're okay, Shadow. I've got you," he murmured. Shadow flinched but didn't bolt. His ears twitched toward the familiar voice. His eyes, though still wide, began to lose their haze. Then, as if surrendering to Michael's calm presence, he dropped his head slightly, letting out a low, breathy whinny. Michael pressed his hand against the stallion's neck, feeling the rapid pulse beneath his fingers. Relief washed over him, like a tidal wave, but the knot in his chest remained. The silence after the chaos was deafening. Tourists stood wide-eyed, still frozen in place. A few had filmed the incident, phones now trembling in their hands. Paramedics rushed toward the horse, carrying emergency kits. Officers surrounded the area with tape and ushered people back. Jessica stayed on the ground, holding Rocky as if her grip could reverse time. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm so sorry," again and again. But there were no words to fix what had happened. Michael didn't speak. He stood there, one hand on his horse, the other hanging limp at his side, bruised and scraped from the fall. His thoughts raced, not just with the images of what had happened, but with the haunting realization of what almost did. Aiden, Shadow, the crowd. One more second, one wrong move, and this could have ended in tragedy. And deep down, Michael knew. This was far from over. The hours after the attack were a blur, a whirlwind of flashing lights, shouting officers, and murmurs from an unsettled crowd. Buckingham Palace, usually a symbol of stoic grandeur, now felt fragile, like the very ground Beneath it had been cracked by chaos. Shadow was escorted from the courtyard by a team of medics and royal guard handlers. His leg was bleeding heavily, the bite deep and raw. Michael walked beside him, refusing to leave his side for even a second. His uniform was dusty, scuffed, and stained with streaks of blood. None of it his own. But he didn't care. All that mattered now was Shadow. Inside the temporary treatment tent, the air was thick with antiseptic and tension. A veterinary officer worked quickly, flushing out the wound, wrapping the leg with gauze. Shadow flinched at every touch, his eyes darting around wildly. Michael stood by his head, one hand resting on the stallion's neck. "You're okay," he whispered again and again, like a mantra. "You're safe. I'm here." Outside, Jessica sat on a stone bench with Rocky curled at her feet. Her face was pale, eyes red and swollen. She hadn't stopped crying since the moment they pulled Rocky off the horse. The bulldog, exhausted and quiet now, laid his chin on her boot, unaware of the disaster he had just caused. A uniformed officer approached her, notepad in hand. His voice was firm, but not cruel. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." Jessica nodded, barely managing to meet his eyes. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she stammered. "Rocky's strong, but he's never done anything like that. He's stubborn, sure, but I didn't think—" The officer held up a hand, gently cutting her off. "I understand. But this isn't just about your intentions. A royal guard horse was attacked. A child was nearly trampled. We'll need a full statement, and there will likely be consequences." Jessica nodded again, guilt crashing over her like a tidal wave. She had come to London to escape stress, to clear her mind. Now her face was on half a dozen viral videos, and she was at the center of a potential international scandal. Across the courtyard, Aiden was curled up in his mother's lap. Rachel cradled him tightly, rocking him gently as if he were still a toddler. His cries had softened into quiet hiccups, but he hadn't let go of her since the moment he was pulled from. "Danger. Is the horse going to be okay, Mommy?" he asked, voice trembling. Rachel looked over at the tent where Shadow was being treated. "I don't know, baby," she said honestly, her voice cracking, "but they're doing everything they can." Inside that tent, Michael sat beside his injured partner, eyes burning from exhaustion and emotion. He had always known the job carried risk, but this had hit different. It had been so fast, so uncontrollable, so close to tragedy, and for the first time in years he felt vulnerable. He pulled out his phone, dozens of missed calls, even more texts, news headlines already beginning to spread. Royal Guard horse attacked in public meltdown. Chaos at Buckingham. Hero sergeant saves child. He ignored them all. There was a soft rustling at the entrance of the tent. Jessica stood there, hesitant, Rocky leashed tightly by her side. Michael looked up, his eyes unreadable. I just wanted to see if he was okay," she said quietly. "And to say I'm so sorry." Michael didn't answer right away. His hand moved gently along Shadow's neck, feeling the horse's shallow breaths. Finally he said, "He's hurt, scared, and if that boy had been one step closer." Jessica nodded. She already knew. "I'll take responsibility for everything," she whispered. "I know I failed him, and I want to help somehow." Michael looked down at Shadow, his battle-scarred partner, his friend. And for the first time since the chaos began, a question crept into his mind that he wasn't ready to answer. Would Shadow ever trust again? Days passed, but the memory of the attack lingered like a bruise, one that refused to fade. Shadow's wound was healing, but his spirit was shaken. Every bark in the distance made him flinch. Every loud noise sent his muscles twitching. The once proud stallion of the Royal Guard now stood hesitant, guarded, not broken but bruised in a way that ran far deeper than flesh. Michael visited the stables every day before sunrise. He'd run his hand gently down Shadow's flank, talk to him in a low voice, clean the bandages with care. But nothing felt the same. The fire in Shadow's eyes had dulled. His confidence, once unshakable, was now tentative at best. Michael didn't say it out loud, but he feared the truth. Shadow might never serve again. Meanwhile, Jessica was wrestling with guilt that refused to let her breathe. The fine from the authorities had been steep, and the media coverage hadn't been kind. Strangers whispered when they passed her on the street. "That's the girl with the dog." Headlines had branded her reckless, careless, even dangerous. Didn't argue. She didn't make excuses. She just hurt. One evening, after much hesitation, she returned to the stables, this time with Rocky on a short, reinforced leash and her heart in her throat. She didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted to say the words to Michael directly, not in a message, not through an officer. Face to face. The stable hand didn't hide his discomfort when he saw her. "You sure this is a good idea?" he asked, eyeing Rocky. Jessica nodded. I need to speak to him." Michael was in the training yard when they arrived, brushing down Shadow after a short walk. His posture stiffened when he saw her. The air between them turned sharp. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone clipped, emotion buried beneath. Jessica stepped forward, voice trembling. "I came to apologize. I know I can't undo what happened, but I have to try to make it right, somehow." Michael crossed his arms. His eyes dropped to Rocky, who was sitting calmly beside her now. Tail still, eyes soft, demeanor transformed from the wild animal of that morning. "Your dog could have killed someone," he said bluntly. "He nearly trampled a child. He wounded my horse. You don't just walk away from that with an 'I'm sorry.'" Jessica swallowed, her voice breaking. "I know, and I won't forgive myself for it. But I want to do more than just say sorry. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, I'll do it. I owe it to Shadow, to that boy, and to you." For a long moment, Michael didn't speak. He glanced at Shadow, who had lifted his head slightly at the sound of Rocky's soft whine. No panic, no flinch, just alert curiosity. Michael looked back at Jessica. "You want to help?" he said. "Then help me rebuild his trust." Jessica blinked, caught off guard. "You mean you'd let me?" "I'm not doing this for you," he interrupted. "I'm doing it for him. He needs to learn that not every dog is a threat. And if your bulldog can be part of that, then fine. But don't expect me to forgive you overnight." Jessica nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't. But I'm here as long as it takes." So it began. Each day, Jessica returned to the stables. She brought Rocky, better trained and tightly controlled. Together, she and Michael worked to reintroduce Shadow to canine presence, starting from a distance, gradually bringing Rocky closer, step by cautious step. It wasn't easy. Shadow spooked often. Michael snapped more than once, but slowly. Progress. Shadow began to settle again. His ears twitched less. His breath steadied. The circles of fear narrowed. It was far from over. But for the first time since that terrible day, there was hope. Weeks passed. The days grew colder. The leaves in the courtyard at Buckingham Palace turned a burnt orange, then brittle brown. And with every sunrise, Shadow took one more step back toward who he used to be. He still flinched at sudden barks, still paused when he saw movement too fast or too close. But the wild panic was gone. Michael could feel it in the way Shadow's body moved, tense but not terrified. A spark had returned to his eyes. Jessica had become a regular fixture at the stables. Rain or shine, she showed up with Rocky. The once unruly bulldog was calmer now, almost gentle. The bond between him and Jessica had deepened, reshaped by discipline, guilt, and growth. Even Michael, stoic as ever, had started to nod when she arrived, a silent acknowledgement of her effort. But the real test was coming. One brisk morning, Michael was summoned to the office of Colonel Gregory Harris, his commanding officer, known for his no-nonsense approach and a stare that could cut steel. "Sergeant Reed," the colonel said, standing by the window, arms folded behind his back. "We've reviewed Shadow's recovery. The higher-ups are impressed with your dedication. But this isn't about effort. It's about results." Michael's jaw tightened. He knew what was coming. There's a royal ceremony next week. The colonel continued. Full public attendance, global press. If Shadow can perform, and I mean flawlessly, we'll consider keeping him in active service. But if he falters, even once, it's over. He'll be retired from the guard. Michael nodded slowly. The words hit like a weight in his chest. Understood. Sir, we'll be ready. When he left the office, he didn't go home. He went straight to the stables. That evening, he called Jessica. I need your help, he said without preamble. There was no hesitation. Whatever you need, Michael, I'm in. The next 6 days were intense. Michael trained Shadow every morning and evening, gradually introducing ceremonial gear, music, flags, anything that might trigger old trauma. Jessica brought Rocky closer with each session, using voice commands, hand gestures, treats. Whatever it took to keep the bulldog still, calm, and quiet. Even little Aiden and his mother Rachel visited, standing at a distance, offering gentle encouragement. The bond that had formed between these strangers felt fragile, but real. Then the day arrived. Buckingham Palace buzzed with anticipation. Rows of spectators stood behind barricades, phones in hand. Reporters lined the edges, cameras rolling. A brass band warmed up in the distance. Every detail was perfect. Michael stood beside Shadow, adjusting the black and gold bridle with steady hands. This is it, boy, he murmured, resting his forehead briefly against Shadow's. We've come too far to stop now. The gates opened. The guard stepped forward in formation. Michael led Shadow out, boots crisp against the stone, his back straight, every movement exact. Shadow followed, regal and composed. For the first 10 minutes, everything was perfect. Then, a scream, followed by a dog's bark. Michael's heart stopped. He turned his head, and there it was. Rocky, straining at his leash in the crowd. Jessica wrestled him back instantly, but the sound had already pierced the air. Shadow froze. His ears twitched, his body tensed. Michael placed a firm hand on his neck. Easy? You're okay, he whispered. The crowd held its breath. And then, Shadow exhaled. His muscles loosened. His hooves moved forward. He kept walking. The rest of the ceremony unfolded like a dream. Shadow poised and proud. Michael steady, as stone. When it ended, the applause was thunderous. Even the Queen's envoy gave a nod of approval. Back at the stables, Jessica ran up to them, tears in her eyes. You did it, she said, barely above a whisper. Michael smiled, placing his hand gently on Shadow's neck. We did it. In that moment, under the fading afternoon sun, they all knew. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a triumph. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this powerful story. What part moved you the most? Was it the unbreakable bond between Michael and Shadow, the redemption arc of Jessica and Rocky, or the quiet courage of little Aiden? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Every perspective matters, and your voice helps keep this community alive. Have you ever witnessed a moment of redemption like this in real life? Or maybe you've experienced a turning point where forgiveness and second chances changed everything? Share your story below. You never know who you might inspire. And here's something fun. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Whether it's a quiet town in the Midwest or a bustling city overseas, we want to know how far this story has traveled. Your comments aren't just words. They're a part of this journey. So scroll down, tap that comment box, and let your voice be heard. And if this story left a mark on your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more emotional, real-life inspired tales coming your way tomorrow. Let's build something meaningful together, one story at a time.